The college football season's a lot closer than most of us probably realize, which is why it is appropriate to talk about the games that are going to make an impact one way or the other. So Joel Klatt released his top 10 games that will impact the 2024 season. I'm not going to go through the entire list here, at least not today, but a couple things did stand out. First game that is of big note to me is Georgia at Alabama, September 28th. We are going to learn what I talked about recently here on the show in that game. How good is Alabama? Are we just overthinking the room and need to realize that Kalen DeBoer has done nothing but win everywhere he's ever gone? And Alabama's not going to be any different. In fact, it could be different in the opposite direction in that he could win even more. We're going to know in that game because Georgia's the preseason national title favorite. They're the preseason SEC favorite, not just in the betting markets, but in my head. That's the way I think about it. Everybody's looking up at Georgia. 2 of the last 3 national championships, arguably the best roster in college football, or at least among them. They've got a great quarterback, Heisman caliber guy in Carson Beck. Kirby Smart's a great coach. That Georgia game in Tuscaloosa, September 28th, going to be wildly entertaining. I think we learn more about Alabama that day than Georgia. If that game is close, that is not going to be an indictment of Georgia to me. That is going to be a credit to Alabama. Because Alabama, this should be, as I've long stated, the worst Kalen DeBoer Alabama team that he will have in his tenure in Tuscaloosa, however long that is. This is going to be the worst one. That doesn't mean they're going to be bad. It just means they're not going to be as good as they will be in the coming years. So you better get Alabama now. This is the year. This is an open year to get Alabama, and it's still not going to be easy. Georgia is a favorite going into Tuscaloosa to play Alabama by 3.5 points. That seems about right. That seems about right. I think I'd lean towards Georgia's roster a little bit. I like Georgia's quarterback more, though Jalen Milroe certainly impressed me over the second half of last season. I think you put him with Kalen DeBoer. It's an interesting fit, and we will learn how good of a fit it can be in that particular game. You can't have entire season-long takeaways after one game, but you'll have played several contests by that point. I don't think Georgia and Alabama are going to suffer a loss. I think Alabama will be able to go into Wisconsin and win, but that game, September 28th, we're going to learn a lot about Alabama in that game. Speaking of the SEC, how about Texas? How about Texas 3 weeks prior to that? At Michigan, week 2. Now, there are some who think that I don't like Michigan. I don't know why you get that notion. I just have my opinions on Michigan. That game at the Big House could very well decide whether or not Michigan goes to the playoff this year. Could absolutely decide, because at 9-3, you're not getting into the playoff. Even SEC or Big Ten, 9-3, you're not getting into the playoff. But 10-2, any Power 4 school, including ACC and Big 12, whose chances are more remote than SEC or Big Ten, obviously, because the caliber of the conferences is different. I think that's how the committee will approach such matters. Texas at Michigan could be the difference between Michigan going 9-3 and 10-2. And here's the other thing. It would put a high quality win on the resume for Sharon Moore and company. Now, Texas is going to be the favorite in that game. They absolutely should be, because Texas on paper is the better team. But are games played on paper? No, they're not. And Texas, just a 3.5 point favorite. So think about that. In the eyes of Vegas, the gap between Texas and Michigan is the same gap between Georgia and Alabama. Just worth noting. But like the Alabama game that I mentioned, we'll learn a lot about Michigan there. They open with Fresno State, who is going to be a good team in the Mountain West. Michigan should not have any problems there. If they do, you question how they will fare against Texas, and that line may move from 3.5 to 5.5 or 6.5, depending on how they look. But if they look the way that I expect them to, they're about a 21-point favorite in that game. If they win by 4 or 5 touchdowns, then that's going to set up a big game at the Big House. And Texas going into Michigan is a far cry from what Michigan has done in the last few seasons in the non-conference slate, which is how I've been critical of them recently here on the show, and frankly for the last couple of years, because I think it's terrible. I think it's terrible that you can play a non-conference schedule as a team, especially as a program that's competing for, and of course, winning a national championship, that you can avoid playing any Power 5 school in your non-conference slate. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's patently absurd. And so I commend Michigan for having this game on the schedule because they canceled that home and home with UCLA. And I don't like that. I didn't like that. I still don't like that. It still bugs me. But that is not the case this year. You can't look at Michigan's schedule and say, they don't have anybody. It's just Ohio State. No, they got tough games on there. They got to host Oregon. They, of course, have to go to Ohio State. And they got to play Texas. So they'd have to play the rest of their schedule perfect. But if you were to lose, just as an example, to Oregon and Ohio State, but you beat Texas there, and those Oregon and Ohio State losses are close, yeah, Michigan could be a playoff team this year. But if you lose that game, I think Michigan's playoff hopes probably go away. That's going to be a difficult one. Speaking of those two games and the teams involved, how about we take the two teams or the two teams that are favored on the road in those big games and we put them against each other. October 19th, Georgia at Texas. Look, I don't like SEC realignment. I don't like Big Ten realignment. I don't like realignment in general for the most part. I think there are some moves that make sense, but most of them don't. Georgia at Texas, October 19th. Did you know that Georgia's schedule is, according to, I forget which metric, but there was a computer-generated metric that said Georgia had the third toughest schedule in all of college football? It's kind of right. Georgia's schedule is not easy. They open with Clemson. I think they're winning that game. It's in Atlanta. It's a neutral site, quote-unquote game. I think they're winning that one. But could I see them losing to Alabama? Yeah, that's Kalen DeBoer. I'm never counting that guy out of a game, even with Kirby Smart. They have to go at Texas. If Georgia goes 2-0 in those games, end the college football season, or everyone else mentally end the season. Because if Georgia's winning both of those games, and if they do so convincingly, then I don't think anybody's going to beat them. They should be the favorites. No doubt about it. They also have to go to Ole Miss. Does that seem easy? I don't think so. I think it's pretty tough. They, of course, play Florida in a neutral site game. They're going to beat Florida. Sorry. Tennessee? Could Tennessee give them a push? They could. Those are all games on Georgia's schedule. I don't think they're going undefeated. I do not think they're going to once again have an undefeated regular season. I think they have at least one loss. Their win total is 10.5. I think there's decent value on the under, even though I think Georgia is a national title favorite and the SEC favorite. Because to go at Ole Miss, at Texas, at Alabama, give me another SEC road slate that's as difficult as that. Yeah, you get Tennessee at home. Gosh, I would hope so. Or else it would look like Greg Sankey and company are trying to get Georgia to lose as many games as they can. So those are just a couple of the big games that stood out to me when Joel Klatt released his top 10. I think we are going to learn a lot about Michigan and Alabama when they take on SEC teams, and then Georgia, Texas. It's just going to be a big game. I don't care for realignment, but that matchup, that will be fun. I will not argue that point. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60%, which is over half, buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.